Awesome. Hey, folks, I am so excited about today. I have a friend, a mentor, someone that I have admired for a number of years. His name is John T. Fleming. He is an amazing author of this book, The Ultimate Gig. He has worked indirectly and directly in the direct selling industry for over 40 plus years. He is a former executive with Avon Products, which is where we first met a number of years ago. And he's the former publisher and editor-in-chief of Direct Selling News. Hello, John. How are you, sir?
Hi, Simon. It's so good to be with you.
Listen, The Ultimate Gig is amazing. Let's jump right in.
Okay.
What is the gig economy?
Thanks for starting with that question, because most people hear gig economy and they immediately begin to think of transportation gigs, Uber, Lyft, that kind of thing. But it is much more. Those are great subsets, options within the gig economy. But the gig economy, from our perspective, is redefining the word work. And when you look at it in its essence, the gig economy empowers people. It allows us to utilize underutilized time, underutilized skill, underutilized assets, and convert time, skill, assets, knowledge, experience into an income opportunity. So that's how we define the gig economy. And then there are a lot of labels floating around, and you may hear sharing economy, peer economy, on-demand economy, platform economy, bottom-up economy. All of those labels are really, from our point of view, subsets of the gig economy, especially if we're talking about empowering people to earn income on their time, working when they want to, how they want to, with a lot of freedom and flexibility. So that's how we define gig economy.
When did you first get involved in studying and researching the gig economy?
That was a bit over 3 years ago now.
Okay.
And you mentioned some of my direct selling experience, and having been familiar with that business model for so many years, I started to observe the gig economy, and all of a sudden we find the emerging of new ways to work, flexible ways to work. And we've all done the Uber, the Lyft, but there's also transportation gigs such as DoorDash and others that make it possible for us to receive goods and services without having to find our way to the store, if you will. And so I became so interested, because when you look into it, you see different categories of gigs. I just mentioned transportation, but we also have service gigs. And I have enjoyed, and I'm sure you have too, the convenience of picking up a smartphone and finding someone who can fix what I unfixed. And that is a business now. And a task rabbit is real, or whatever name they may be going by. So you have service gigs, you also have selling gigs. Etsy has emerged as a global mall, whereas you can go there and basically find almost any kind of item you can think of. And the beautiful piece to shopping someplace like Etsy is that you are always purchasing whatever it is that you're looking for, from an independent contractor who's in business for himself or herself. And many of the items are made by these individuals. So Etsy is a new form of a selling gig. If you have something to sell, something that you're passionate about, you can use that platform, engage in that platform. So we have transportation, we have service gigs, we have selling gigs, and now we have leasing gigs. And Airbnb made leasing popular. If you have an extra room, an extra couch, now with the support of a company like Airbnb, you can find ways to rent that extra space, that extra asset in a very meaningful way and turn it into an income opportunity. So I became fascinated about what I was observing about 3 years ago, and I decided to create the Ultimate Gig Project. So the first step was get involved in some research, was able to pull together a great team. They get all the credit for the ideas and how we formed the initial approach. And then we decided, as we did the research, to write the book. And then in writing the book, we realized we had created a lot of assets that might be usable or useful to people who were seeking to better understand or to engage in the gig economy. And that's how it all started. So I developed a new passion about 3 years ago, Simon. Did a lot of reading, a lot of research, and we continue to do it today.
I'm curious, and I'm sure everyone that's listening to us right now, John, do you have any facts or stats that will help kind of anchor and help us put our arm around just the impact of the gig economy and how big is the economy here in the United States and abroad?
Yeah, this is actually what got my attention because I believe in the numbers and I wanted to know exactly what's behind the phenomenon. And 70% of Americans actually in this moment in time have not saved all of what they would like to earn and save. Now that's a stat. You can find more details by looking at U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, look at some of the banking institutions, look at the profiles of people in different age categories, and you'll be amazed at the savings level. So the savings level is probably less than what most would like for it to be. So that's something that fuels the gig economy. And then when you look at who's participating, an estimated 57 million Americans are participating. That's representing better than 30% of the workforce. It's climbing toward 40%. When you look at the economic impact, in 2019, this was pre-pandemic, the estimates were the economic impact from the gig economy alone in the United States alone was over $1.4 trillion. Wow. So a lot of money is being transacted in this gig economy. And then when you look at some of the qualitative surveys that have been done on workers to try to find out why are people so interested? People from all walks of life, by the way. Young, mature, every segment you can think of. And there are some reasons for that. But up to 80% of workers may be interested in some type of gig. So that's a phenomenal statistic. It's growing at a rate of about 8.1% per year. The workforce growth has been about 2.6 pandemic stat. That's coming back now. The satisfaction rate is really high. 97% are satisfied with their gig, what they're doing. And the reason for that is that there are no long-term agreements. The resume is not as important as the desire. But when you really look into it, the largest individual segment of gig workers happen to be professional freelancers. Now, that would include attorneys, it would include educators, it would include graphic artists, of course, it would include people who have skills that they want to make available to others. And because technology is so powerful and such a key driver, a person can market themselves or their skills, their talents, and the client does not have to be in the same town. They do not have to go to a fixed facility. The client could be in another city, another state, or even another country. That's how the gig economy is connecting providers of goods and services with consumers of clients who need those goods and services. So there are a lot of positive stats. And the way we see that is that we are experiencing a shift from the more traditional industrial economy model to a new model that is more digital in nature and certainly appealing to those who have an interest in micro enterprise.
Wow, incredible. You know, two quick things. I have used professionals on Upwork, and they have done phenomenal work in what I've asked them to do. But the second thing, John, I think that's so powerful is they get paid instantly.
Yes.
So this new model, you kind of take the friction out of when am I going to, be paid for the service that I just provided. But here's another question. There's a lot of people as the country is opened back up who don't necessarily want to return the work. And I'm curious to hear your feedback. Do you think it's because they can string together a few gigs and be okay, or they're thinking about how they might take advantage of the gig economy?
Well, I love this question. And this question came to me a few weeks ago from another good friend. And there was an article, I forgot what publication the article was in, but it was talking about people not returning to work. And the reasons are not that they don't want to work, but the pandemic has done several things. Now, we have to give all due respect to the seriousness of this and the state that it put us in. But as we were forced to curtail activities, as we were forced to communicate this way, more so than jumping on planes and trains, which I used to do a lot of, we learned new skills. And we learned that we didn't always have to be there. And we began, we believe, and this is the team that I work with and some great academics on this team, we believe that people began to understand themselves better. They grew in self-confidence. They became more aware that flexibility and freedom can exist and that I can get the work done. Employers learned a lot, that the productivity didn't necessarily drop because we went virtual or because people did not come into the office. And that is new learning. And it's wonderful learning because now people are beginning to realize if flexibility and freedom are available, then they want to experience that a little bit more, because you take a person that has a lot of things going on, taking care of the home, children, taking care of an elderly parent, whatever it may be. We have busy lives. And the gig economy says you can work 9 to 5 if you want to, but we know that most people don't work that way. In the gig economy, they work a few hours per day, and most work 2 to 3 days per week, a few hours per day. Now, those hours can be 7 to 10 at night, can be 10 to 12 at night, could be 9 to 10 in the morning, 9 to 12 in the morning. The gig worker makes the choice. And this is the wonderful revelation. And so we think that more people got a taste of it. They developed their self-confidence and they decided, I like this. And I can connect my passion and my purpose with this. And I can do some other things and maybe even orchestrate a better life-work balance. I like this. And so we see that behind this new stat that people are not returning to work. They are still working and pursuing work, just in a different format. And it's a great blend.
Yeah. One of the things you mentioned in the book is you talk about how women represent 20 to 30% of the gig workers. But you also look at the future and how women will impact the gig economy. Can you unpack that a little bit more for everyone that's listening to us?
Would love to. I've always been interested in the ratios between men and women in the workplace. And I was fortunate to spend 15 plus years within a company that uses as its tagline, the company for women. And you know, I'm talking about Avon now.
Yes.
So that was a great experience. And I learned that the environment thought differently. We did things differently, and our values were perhaps a bit different. So I wanted to look at the participation rates of men versus women when we first started this research over 3 years ago. And actually, it was about 30-some% women at that time, 70-some% men. There were reasons for that because the emergence of the gig economy goes back to the emergence of transportation gigs. They got the visibility because they were, in a way, disrupting the taxi industry. So there was a lot of chatter about what's going on, you know, Uber, Lyft, they are everywhere. And Uber and Lyft don't own the cars, the people own the cars. And the people are doing the work who did not necessarily sign up to be a taxi driver. And I have interviewed over 200 transportation gig workers personally, because whenever I get in the car, I have a few questions. And it's always fascinating to listen to what is said, especially when I'm talking to a woman who may be in school, who may be taking care of a child, who may be working another job, but looking to bring some incremental income in. I always predicted that this participation rate was going to steadily increase and that we would see more women involved as gigs began the process of offering more choices. Don't forget, transportation, service, selling, leasing. Biggest single segment, professionals that have a service that they would like to market more so in the marketplace. So now last year, this is about 2.5 years later, we look at the gig economy again, and this is a formal research, a formal piece of research, and the ratio of participation is 49% women, 51% men. So that has happened, Simon, in a very short period of time. So I think it's because of the appreciation for flexibility. It's the appreciation for gender equality. It's the appreciation for do the work, get paid very quickly. It's the appreciation for not having to be bound to long-term agreements or the rigidity of 9 to 5, so many days per week in a place that I have to get to. As we know, the gig economy allows most people to work from home and in some cases work from phone. So there's a lot of flexibility here, and that is why it is predicted to become more and more appealing to women in particular. The things I said obviously apply to men as well, but the gender equality piece and not having to worry about the glass ceiling, it's just something that's very exciting. And I also predict, and I don't mind saying this, that the quality of service and how products and services are made available to consumers is predicted by many of us to go up as more and more women do get involved. I hope that answers some of your question.
Totally, totally. So there's a reoccurring theme of flexibility and freedom. I think everyone that's listening to us right now, they're hearing that. I want to build on that. And one of the things you talk about in the book is that CEOs are looking to outsource or leverage gig workers going forward as they look at one of their biggest expenses, that being labor. Can you speak to how companies are thinking about leveraging the gig economy?
You are now touching on a very big topic. I'll use this as an example. about 2 months ago, maybe 3 months ago, Albertsons, the grocery chain here in this part of the country, made a big decision. They moved a lot of what were part-time jobs into the gig economy model. And then you have some people saying they were attempting to avoid paying benefits. They were attempting to avoid, several things that employees become eligible for. Our side takes this position. We look at the wonderful reasons for a company moving more toward a gig model. If people are looking for flexibility and freedom in how they work, why not try to provide that? So the motive is not just to avoid taxes or benefits or anything like that. The motivation is to provide more people with the opportunity to be more micro-entrepreneurial. And if they want flexibility, why not give it to them? And it may mean that you provide more people with the opportunity to work. So obviously, Albertsons thought through and came up with new strategy that says many of the jobs that used to be will no longer be. And many of those jobs are now available to gig workers who want to interact with us as independent contractors. We think it's a wonderful thing. So will there be challenges? Yes, because you have three stakeholders. You have public policymakers that want to make sure that workers are treated fairly. So will there be some rules and regulations that may change? Yes. But the other big stakeholder is the worker. And should we want to empower workers to feel more excited about the flexibility and freedom by which they can work? I think the answer to that should be yes. And then when you look at the firm should not use gig workers as an opportunity to circumvent anything that's good for a worker. But we do not take the position that a gig providing company should be providing all of the benefits that employees get. Just make those benefits available to independent contractors at reasonable expense, and they will be able to access them as micro-entrepreneurs, but not as employees. So we think that this is a win-win. Do we have a few challenges along the way? We speak to that in the book. We have a chapter on challenges, but a wonderful new pathway in terms of how we are redefining the word work.
Incredible. One of the things you just mentioned, and you introduced this whole term called micro-entrepreneur in the book. So there are folks that are listening to us right now, and they're saying, okay, John, I'm loving what you're saying. How can I leverage or take advantage of the gig economy? Where should I start? How should I think about it?
Well, I think that one should start with a pursuit of information. And I'm so delighted to be invited to join you on your show, because that's what we were doing when we decided to do this. We wanted to fill the vacuum out there in terms of good information, easy to read, easy to access. Let's help more people make sense of the economy. So obviously, they start with our book. That's a good but there's so much information out there. So start by informing yourself so that you get an idea of the landscape, because the last thing you want to do is approach a gig as a need for a part-time job. It's much greater than that. A gig gives you the opportunity to function as an entrepreneur, but more like a micro-entrepreneur. Now, here's the distinction. Entrepreneurship usually means large investment, high risk. Micro-entrepreneur brings it down to ordinary people who can work on their own time, how they want to, when they want to, without financial risk. So, if you can drive, you can become an Uber driver. If you can fix something, you can get involved in a service gig. If you can sell something, you can find so many ways to turn that into an income opportunity. Now, this is where I'll come back to direct selling. The entry fee to get started with all of the incredible support of a brand is only a few dollars. I mean, I'm literally talking about a few dollars. If you're interested in starting your own gig micro entrepreneurial business, then look at companies like Shopify, that's based out of Canada, that gives you all of the sophistication, the marketing, the support that you would need as a micro entrepreneur for a few $100s. I mean, it's amazing. And they can help you launch globally as well. So micro entrepreneurship is opening up to the masses now. It's not available to a reserved few. And when I say the masses, I'm talking about Gen X millennials, but I'm also talking about more mature. I'm talking about those who retired and found out, well, it's not what I thought it was. I want to do something. And maybe you cannot go back to what you did in the past, but you can go to something else. You can create something that may turn into be something great and wonderful beyond what you ever conceived. Most importantly to understand is that gig workers are usually there in the beginning because they're interested in incremental income without disturbing what they're doing that may fall into a range of $300, $400, $500 to $1,500 per month. Now, when you step back and think about that, that's wonderful micro entrepreneurship. I get the freedom, the flexibility, the ability to be my own boss, and I could earn $300, $400, $500, $1,500 a month, in addition to whatever else is coming in. That could be life-changing.
That's so good. So a few things for those of you that are listening to us right now is accessibility, flexibility, and freedom. For those of you who are saying, I'm working a job right now, should I quit my job and go into business for myself? Guess what? You don't, because the gig economy has lowered the barrier to entry, and you can start off small and build something that grows. John, in chapter 6 in your book, The Ultimate Gig, you talk about direct selling, and I would love for everyone listening to us to really just understand direct selling and why it's important, how we should think about that as it relates to the gig economy.
Well, I love direct selling because it changed my life. And I grew up wanting to be an architect. And that's all I wanted to do, learn how to design buildings. And then you find out that it's more than the design. A lot of designs never get built. So when I started in direct selling, I was really looking for that supplemental income because I knew I needed that in my household. And I found a wonderful business model that, when executed well, is absolutely incredible. People from all walks of life can get involved, low entry. You learn at your own pace. I was a very slow learner, by the way, even though over the years received a lot of awards for high performance within that model. But anyone looking at this gig economy, I always encourage them to look closely at direct selling, because you'll find a company that's put it all together that allows you to start basically with your desire, your passion, your enthusiasm, your purpose. And you take Avon as an example. I don't want to get into labels, but I happen to work there, so I can, I think, just use that one as an example. A wonderful moment in time when I had the opportunity to meet people from all walks of life, women primarily, that had chosen to represent the Avon brand. And some did it a few hours a day, some did it a few hours per week, some actually turned it into a career. And I have friends that I talk to now that built Avon businesses as an independent contractor who have been doing it for 25, 30 years, Simon. Within this model, you have many stories like that of people who started with small aspirations or expectations that turn their business into something really positive that's based on selling and servicing customers, acquiring and retaining customers. And I'm not talking about variations where maybe that mix gets distorted. I'm talking about the essence of that model: selling and serving customers, acquiring, retaining customers, and being able to enjoy the benefit of working with products, services that you can be proud of over a long period of time. If you look at it that way, it's amazing what might happen. And I met you because at Avon, we had these special trips for the special performers, and we wanted to take them on something special, whereas they could come together, and we wanted them to be in a special place, and we wanted to keep them there for 2 or 3 days so that they could benefit from one another. And Disney was one of the places that we wanted to take them. And you were on staff at Disney at that time, and that's how we met. And it was because we wanted to celebrate the achievements of these people who had taken a direct selling model and really turned it into something special. So in that chapter, and it is a chapter because I wanted to devote space to help people understand that whenever you're looking at something, make sure you look far enough into it to understand what it's really all about. So we give you checklists and we give you things to think about in that chapter to help you think through what is it that you're really in pursuit of. And I think that that chapter helps a lot of people better understand one of the most significant business models out there, because wonderful things can happen when you do it and stick to it. Thanks for the question.
Wow. So what I love about everything that you just said is that indirect selling, if you have the want to, the direct selling industry will teach you the how to, but you got to have the want to discover the how to. I think the other interesting thing, you talked about 4 channels, 4 areas that those that are listening to us can enter into the gig economy: transportation, sales, service, and leasing. But what's interesting about the sales, direct selling specifically, is the piece around personal development. In your book, you take us into the mind of an architect, and you talk about personal development through the lens of how do you become the architect of your life. Can you just unpack that for everyone that's listening to us right now as they think about the gig economy, how they can also develop themselves by being the architect of their life?
Yes. And this will require the next show and the one after that. And after that. It's a great way to maybe try to bring some summary to this. I've always used that phrase that people can become the architects of their own destiny when they know how. And just as a building must have a foundation, and it must have more than design, it must have engineering, it must meet certain structural tests. You have to wire the building, you have to bring in the environmental controls. Many things go into the building of a building before you get the building itself. From a construction point of view, a structural perspective, buildings that were built well have sustained themselves for thousands of years. That's why You know, we go to Greece, we go to Egypt, we go to South America to see some of these structures that were built thousands of years ago. So when it comes to life, the first thing that I would say I learned is that we have to take time to design and plan. And I read a book, and I think that this was first revealed in a book by Norman Vincent Peale. The title of the book was Think and Grow Rich. And he talked about the fact that very few people take the time to design and plan a life. Now, here I am aspiring to be an architect. It made sense to me because I know how much time goes into the design of the building. You don't wake up one morning and bring in a crew and say, let's build it. It takes more than that. So if we take the time to think through our visions, what really excites us, what really activates the energy of our heart, our passion, our purpose. And then if we begin to plan how we will translate that into our new reality, we activate a better chance of getting that done. And so that's why in Ultimate Gig Resources, we put a planning guide. Because if you don't map it out and know exactly where you want to go, how or why would you ever expect to get there? So it's so important to know where you want to go and then to be able to take those steps, always examining your reality as you plan the next step to learn more, to grow more, to be more successful at whatever it is that you're doing. Now, I'm not talking about utopian success. I'm talking about incremental success that will make a difference in your life. So I use an example in that book. If you're earning 100,000 and spending 100,000, you've got a problem. So the gig economy is not earn another 10,000 and spend another 10,000. That won't lead you to being the architect of your own destiny. So we have in Ultimate Gig Resources, and this is one of the reasons why we developed that piece in addition to the book, there is a guide, the Ultimate Gig Planning Guide, that helps you to sort this out, create a plan that can be not just a temporary plan, but a lifetime process of approaching the most important asset that we have in terms of management, and that is one's personal life.
Excellent.
So, did that answer
folks,
your question?
That has absolutely answered it. And I'm telling you, you have to get this book. I have read it. I have dog-eared pages. I've underlined it. And I'm curious, John, where can people go to acquire the book and invest in buying the book?
Well, our website, both of these addresses take you to the same place. I don't need to give you both of them. ultimategigbook.com. That's easy to remember. ultimategigbook.com. And Emerald Publishing, which is based out of the UK, is our publisher. You can purchase the book through their bookstore, or you can go to Amazon UK or Amazon US. And Amazon is so good, the book comes typically in a couple of days.
Wow. John, thank you so much for joining us on Spark You. And we so appreciate the wisdom that you've shared with us and given us insight into the ultimate gig. Folks, you've heard a lot today. Go and get this book, but only don't get the book and read it. I encourage you to get an accountability partner, read it together. And now you have insight how to be a micro entrepreneur and to think about growing your life, growing your business, making a difference in a world that is changing and moving into freedom and flexibility. So thank you so much. Join us again.
Thank you, Simon. And if you purchase the book, also purchase Ultimate Gig Resources. It's worth the trip.
Awesome.
Thank you, my friend.
Thank you so much.